On 9 News Watch, I'm Chris Bianchi with our politics guru, Marshall Zellinger, who's had a big night. And Marshall, I want to start things out by kind of getting a little bit of an overview here in terms of what we saw this evening. The three statewide propositions all failing, kind of a mixed bag in terms of Denver. Mayor Hancock getting 4 of his 5 initiatives passing, but the one that didn't pass was 303, kind of a little bit all over the map. But what are your top line takeaways?
A bit surprised that all three statewide issues failed. I mean, it wasn't even. I mean, I would consider close 1 or 2 points. These right now are like 5 or more points separating with the no, and bigger for the Amendment 78 because you need 55% for that to pass. So that was considerably less than that. I mean, completely no, but you'd have to sway a lot more. I'm just kind of rambling because it's late in the night here, but we'll show the results in a minute, and I'll be able to explain that better. Like right here with Amendment 78, you need 55% to pass. And it had more than that no, so that's quite the swing. My takeaway on the statewide issues here is that perhaps they're confusing, which because of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and because the TABOR requires ballot language to be written a certain way, the confusing language is purposeful and you can't do anything about it. And that messes up some people's efforts to get things passed because it's just confusing. And so one thing is perhaps 78, Proposition 119, and Proposition 120 were just confusing. And maybe voters just didn't want to change the way the state does business currently. I'm struggling to come up with like one common denominator that says this is why all three statewide issues and some of the Denver issues failed.
I mean, again, all over the map, we mentioned Amendment 78, which would have given the state legislature increased authority over custodial funds. That would have basically, anything federal would have, anyways, it gave the state legislature, would have given the state legislature more authority. Now, the one that certainly already failed, in fact, they've already conceded, would have been the proponents for Proposition 119, a marijuana tax, which, Marshall, you mentioned. Maybe a little bit surprising here that, again, marijuana taxes have generally passed here, both in Denver and statewide, and both of those failing.
Yeah, maybe that's my biggest takeaway, is that both the statewide pot tax and Denver's pot tax increase proposals both failed. And in the past, and I think this is last year, I was on air election night saying, if you're going to pass a tax in the state of Colorado, the easiest thing to do is to make it a sin tax. You're either going to have cigarettes, pot, or gambling. People will say yes to those taxes. People don't say yes to taxing across the board for something else, for a statewide sales tax or a statewide property tax increase, something like that. And that, I have to eat my words because Proposition 119, no to this increase in the statewide pot tax. And in Denver, ballot issue 300, no to a Denver increase in the city sales tax for pandemic research. So either people have said pot has a limit, or you're saying we just didn't like how you were going to spend this pot tax. And what we're seeing now on Denver ballot measure 303.
This is the homeless camping one.
Yeah. That was one we were keeping a close eye on because even if it passed, there was going to be a lawsuit because a judge changed it 2 days ago. But that's a moot point. The homeless encampment complaint enforcement failing considerably. And on the flip side, I don't mean to take this away from you, but on the flip side, 2B, one of the city council and mayor's bond issues, to fund more hotels and motels and convert them into homeless shelters, that passed. So Denver voters said, we're not interested in having a new way to enforce the camping ban, but we are interested in having the city fund new ways to house those who are experiencing homelessness.
So, again, very, very kind of, I wouldn't say mixed messaging, but certainly mixed messaging, depending on how you look at it. Final one we kind of haven't talked on yet, would have mentioned specifically would have been Prop 120, which was the statewide property tax cut as proposed specifically for lodging properties. This was supported by conservatives and Governor Polis. Interestingly, this one also failing, as we mentioned, all three statewide ballot initiatives going down.
And also confusing because this wasn't a property tax cut. It was part of the equation for property taxes, but for simplicity's sake, let's say it was a property tax cut. It wasn't for everybody. The intent of the ballot issue was for it to reduce property taxes for everybody, but the state legislature changed that earlier this year, and it was only going to impact 160,000 out of 2+ million property owners. Even if it passed, the people who put it on the ballot were going to go to court to sue and say, no, we intended this for everybody. So maybe that added to the confusion that, wait a minute, am I voting on something that impacts me? Am I voting on something that doesn't impact me? It's not impacting anybody because it failed.
All right. Well, there you have it. Any other big takeaways from this evening?
I'm trying. So the Park Hill 301 and 302. 301, simplicity again, says you can't develop Park Hill Golf Course unless there is a future vote of Denver voters as a whole. That passed. 302, by the same margin, failed, which basically said we can develop Park Hill Golf Course. I'm being very simplistic. I thought that was going to be a bit closer than it was, and I think it was like 60-40 yes on 301, 60-40 no on 302, which, I mean, it basically said the people who voted yes on one essentially voted no on the other.
All right. Well, busy evening. This caps your 3 weeks of election night, because you were saying that earlier in the evening, that it's not just election night, it's the 3 weeks that lead up to it. But, well, hopefully you get some rest tonight. Marshall Zellinger, we appreciate a few minutes of your time and really your presence all evening long here on 9 News
Thanks,
Watch.
Chris.
So, thanks to Marshall. Thanks to you as well for joining us. And, of course, we'll have continued coverage here on 9 News in the morning and throughout the day and throughout the week. So, again, thanks for joining us here on 9 News Watch.